Hey guys, it's Erica, and today we're going to be talking about Philodendron Pedatum care. It is a super easy plant to care for. It doesn't need a lot of attention, and it's very hardy. It can survive through a lot. It's also a climbing plant, so if you want a taller looking philodendron, this is a really good one. You can see this is my one on a little stake, and it's growing up really nicely. Here's a little smaller one in case you have less space. It's also a good plant. If you have low sunlight, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this plant. It needs more sun to be able to grow, and it gets bigger leaves as it gets older. They kind of change their shape from a juvenile form to more mature form. So I would say medium to bright and direct sunlight is really good for this plant. It can even take dappled sunlight. So if you have a spot in the backyard that's covered by trees, it's kind of shady, but if the wind blows, there'll be a little bit of sun hitting the plant. That's perfectly fine. I think it would actually enjoy that sunlight a lot, but direct sunlight is gonna burn the leaves. Medium to dappled sunlight is good. And like I said, not really lower sunlight. It can also grow under grow lights. I had mine under grow lights until it got too big, and then that's when I had to move it outside. When you have your plant in sunlight, it will, of course, move towards the sunlight. So for my stake plant, if you have a stake plant, I would really recommend kind of rotating it to face the sun. What I've been doing is I've been rotating the plant so that it kind of grows up, like spirals up the stick that it's on. It's been really working well for me like that, and I don't need to keep trying to stake it up there. So you can see I've kind of just keep angling it so that it rotates up the stick. If you try letting your plant trail, it's not gonna necessarily trail. It will continue to try growing upwards, and I don't have a plant tall enough or heavy enough, I guess, for it to kind of start trailing downwards, but I don't think that is the best way to keep your plant. So if you have one of these, I would really recommend putting it on a trellis or a stick or a stake, something to keep it growing upwards, because it does grow upwards and it doesn't seem like a trailing plant since the stem of it kind of hardens. Oh, that's another thing I should mention, is that the base of the plant will turn a kind of dark brown color, and it turns almost bark-like, and that's also nothing to be worried about. I'm not sure why it does that, but from what I can tell, it's probably to kind of stabilize the plant and keep it growing upwards like a tree, I guess. So yeah, stake is definitely something you're going to want to look into. This is not really a trailing type of philodendron. And for the watering, usually what makes a low maintenance plant low maintenance is that they do not require a lot of water, and they're not picky about their watering schedule. So usually I will water this plant whenever the soil dries out. You can wait till it dries out completely, or you can wait till most of the upper portion of the soil is dry. If you want to use a moisture meter, I would wait until the soil gets around a level 2 to 3, well, depending on the moisture meter you're using. More on the drier side is better. If it gets too thirsty, the plant will droop, so you can also use that as a measurement to decide when to water your plant. I would just be more conservative with the watering rather than overwatering it, because the stem of the plant could possibly get rotted, or the roots too could get rotted, and then that's just gonna be not fun for anyone. The top part of the plant's gonna die. Of course, if that happens, you can propagate the upper part of the plant and then save it that way, but I would say just be more conservative with the watering to prevent that from happening. And another thing that makes a plant like this low maintenance is that they don't really require a ton of humidity. If you have a drier environment, then I would water it more often, but they do not need high levels of humidity at all. I live in Southern California, and like I said, I keep my plants outside. Southern California does not have the highest humidity ever, but they're still thriving, and there's no crispy edges or anything going on like that, unless you maybe give your plant a little too much sunlight or don't water it often enough. then that's where you're gonna get the crispy edges. But lack of humidity is not something necessarily that will cause that to happen. So shouldn't be worried if you don't have a humidifier. And for soil, since this is an aeroid and it does like to climb, it would like an airy mixture. So adding a lot of orchid bark is really good for that, and a lot of perlite and other aerating amendments. Terracotta pot would be good for this plant. I think only one of mine is in a terracotta pot, and then every other one is in a plastic pot. So I don't think that's much of a, like I said, it's a really easy plant. So it doesn't really matter if it's in terracotta, ceramic, or plastic. Mine have all been doing really well in plastic nursery pots, but that is probably the reason why I can get away with watering them so infrequently, because the plastic does retain water, and if you put your plant in a terracotta pot, then you should water it less often because the soil will dry out more quickly. Sometimes on these plants, what will happen is the stem on a leaf will kind of get mushy and bend, and then the leaf will yellow away. I have not quite figured out why this happens. It doesn't happen too often, but it does sometimes happen. So you can see at the base of this plant, it got a floppy, I guess, and then the leaf started turning yellow. So if that happens, you could just cut it off and it's not a big deal. I don't think it signifies that you're doing anything super wrong with the plant. It might just be part of the life cycle of getting rid of older leaves. But yeah, like I said, you could just cut it off. And it does take a while for the leaves to yellow. So it'll get floppy and the leaf will stay green for a pretty long time, and it yellows slowly over time from what I've experienced. So that does sometimes happen. And lastly, for fertilizer, since this is such an easy plant, you could just grab any house plant fertilizer and follow the directions on the back. Of course, pull back on the fertilizing during the winter and fall months, and then you can kind of get back into it in the summer and springtime. What I like to use for all my plants is fish fertilizer, and I will just dilute it to whatever the recommended amount is on the back of the bottle, and I will water this plant usually in the summertime, probably twice a month with that fertilizer, and it does pretty well with that. And to propagate, you want to get your stem, and what I look for is a node without any leaf on it, and I will use that to be my rooting node. You don't need to find a node without a leaf on it, but I like to, so I found this node right here. And you just grab your shears and cut beneath the node as close to the node below it as possible. And then once you do that, it's better if you have a diagonal or a slanted cut so that it has more chance of rooting. And you can see here there's no leaf. Like I said, if there's a leaf, that's fine. You can still use it. And you just go ahead and place that in water. And the sunnier spot, the better. It will root much faster in a south-facing window more than a north-facing window. So just a little tip for that. So that's it for this plant, this beautiful Philodendron Pedatum. Like I said, it's a really easy plant to care for. So if you're looking for an easy plant that looks like it might be difficult to care for, like this does definitely look like a more tropical plant, then this is a really good one for you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye!